Okay, we are going to go ahead and get started. Thanks for joining for our presentation today. We're going to be talking about doing a reservation system in SharePoint. Before we get into all that, I just want to lay some ground rules and talk about our session today. If you do have questions about the presentation or some of the steps that I'm showing, please enter those questions into the chat in the GoToWebinar interface. We will do our best to try and answer those questions during the presentation. I do want to mention before I forget, towards the end of our presentation, we will be doing a drawing for an Infowise polo shirt with an embroidered logo. It's really nice. I have a couple of them and I wear them proudly. So please make sure that you do stay for the end. Just to give some quick intros, I am a SharePoint developer / consultant, and I work with several different customers building solutions in various SharePoint environments, both for on-premise and for Office 365. As far as working with Infowise, I have used their product for about 4 years, and it really helps me to do many things that would otherwise be difficult in SharePoint. So I've come to really depend on these tools. So as I go through my presentation today, I'm going to kind of show you the steps that I use to build this reservation system. What's very exciting to me about that is the fact that I was able to build this solution without having to use any custom code or any difficult settings. Really, I was able to basically do all this through configuration and just working through various wizards and menus and that type of thing. Just to talk broadly to start about the purpose of the reservation system and what I've built, I think most of us are familiar with the fact that Microsoft Outlook does include a utility for reserving conference rooms and things of that nature. But for various reasons, there's limitations with that. It may not fit with what you're trying to do, and it's really not customizable. For the most part, what you see is what you get, and it's not adaptable to other situations. So in my presentation today, I'm going to show you that this system that I've set up could be used to do things like reserving equipment. And certainly in Outlook, you wouldn't have the ability to do anything of that nature. So I'm going to start out by showing you some of the functionality, kind of start with the end first, if you will. I want to show you how the system works, and then what I will do afterwards is start to go through the settings and talk to you about how I was able to configure the system to have the functionality that you see. Okay, I'm working in a SharePoint online site. All the functionality that I've set up, you could do it just the same in an on-premise SharePoint environment. It just happens that I've put it together in this type of environment. The system I've set up, it's very simple. It works just from one single SharePoint list. And then I've got some list views and dashboards that help users to look up the specific information that they want. So certainly in any reservation system, one key aspect of that is going to be the ability to look on a calendar, to check reservations and see what's been booked, see what's available, things of that nature. One challenge when it comes to calendars, especially in a situation like this where there's going to be many records, is that you have a lot of information that you're trying to pack onto one screen. And so in that situation, it becomes extremely important to be able to control the view and filter to show only the information specific to what you need. What I'm showing is a component in the Infowise tools. It's a custom calendar which includes a lot of functionality and flexibility that does not exist in the out-of-the-box SharePoint calendar. And by doing some configuration settings, I'm able to have that flexibility, that I want to be able to see what I want. So this is one way our users can view and take a look at the calendar to find out what's booked. So you can see in here, I've got multiple events that I've already booked. So this would be a way that I could check and take a look and see what's already in the system. If you'll notice, when I hover over events, I've got a hover window, and that's something I can custom configure where I can pick fields that would show up. So that's going to be very important to us because we're really trying to customize the view so that we don't pack too much information on the screen. So we want just the broad summary data on the calendar by default, and then when I roll over it, we want to get that detailed information. So a little bit later on, I'll show you how I'm able to set that up. Another key aspect of this is the ability to filter. In my system, I've set it up so that you can make reservations either for rooms or equipment. The design structure, the overall solution, you could have many categories. You know, I could have vehicles, for example, really just following the same pattern. But if I toggle that, you can see that it immediately refreshes the calendar view. And also notice that it did not require a server post back. It's immediately updating the display. So when I do things like page through days or weeks, I don't have to sit there and wait for that long server post back. So it's some really nice functionality. With the custom calendar control, I actually have 4 different views I can look at. Just by clicking the buttons upper right, I can go between day, week, month, and even a Gantt view of the data if I want to do that. So I have a lot of flexibility in terms of the views, and also using the filter dropdown to control what data is being displayed. Another nice feature I like is when I click on these calendar events, of course I don't have to jump around to different screens, and I can go in here and it'll take me directly to the SharePoint record. I can very quickly make an update to this, just to provide a easy user interface. So in this case, if I want to adjust the start time for this, I can just come in and change the time. And once I save that record, it will return me back to that calendar view. So I can do that very quickly. I don't have to jump around between a lot of screens, and it just makes it very easy for me. So you can see the red stapler start times changed for me. So that's just one way to look at our data. So for our users on our main dashboard, when they want to come in to make a reservation, they can just click for a new record. Notice that I've got a column for status, and that is part of some functionality that I'm going to show where we're checking for conflicts. Naturally, in any type of reservation system, we need some kind of smart machinery or functionality to make sure we don't have a double booking. And the way our system works is we have an action set up which will check for that. You can see in the list, just a few moments ago, I made a reservation where there was a schedule conflict. And what happens is you get a status where it'll show a conflict if it picks up on the fact this event has overlapped something. The actual form itself, by design, is extremely simple. I, by default, have the name of the person reserving. Notice that I don't even have to fill in the data. It just auto-fills that in for me. It's just getting the current user, and then I simply pick the resource type. My system is designed to accommodate either for a room or for equipment, and you notice that the form updates immediately, real time, depending on which thing that I pick. So if I pick a room, it's going to ask me for attendees to join me. If I have that, I want to provide it. And then I've got a list of my rooms for my organization. That's just using values from a lookup list. So that'd be very simple to update if I need to. So I'll put somebody in here. And then basically I just pick my start and end time. So in this case, I'll go ahead and make it for tonight. I'll do one where I know there's not a conflict. We'll say from 6 to 7 tonight, and hit save. And that's all I have to do to make a reservation. Now, in the background, there's going to be an action running, and it's going to check. Notice my status changed. It says requested, and this is a state that shows up just for a few seconds before it checks, and it shows that I'm okay. It gives me confirmed status. Now, additional to that, I'll stop sharing my screen just for a second, just to show you what the email looks like. We have some email notifications tied to this. Okay. Okay, so here's my email notification. Let me expand that out. Okay, so this is important. Of course, we want to make sure an email goes out both to the person who made the reservation and also to the any people who are attending. And it's got all of that key data. It tells me the room reserve, the date, time, start, and end, and basically says you're good to go. We've booked the room for you. Okay, so that is the gist of it. If we have a conflict, we're going to get a different kind of an email. Okay, so let me close that, and let me come back to our main dashboard. Now, if you have a conflict, what's going to happen is it's going to send an email and basically advise you, okay, well, you need to update that. There was already an existing reservation that conflicted with that. So rather than just, sort of make them start over, they can just update the record to make sure that works. So you might wonder, okay, well, if there's conflict, I don't want to keep that record. We have some more functionality in there where hourly, based on a timer action, it'll go ahead and delete the reservations where there's a conflict and nobody had made an update to that. This kind of system, I would anticipate many, many records accumulating over time. So to help your users, what you want to do is provide different kinds of views to help them find the information. So I've set up some different views of this. The default dashboard, it's grouped first by the resource type. Is it equipment or room? Then I'm just using the SharePoint group by settings to break it down by month, and then it's ordered reverse chronological. So I'm always going to see that most recent stuff on first at the top of the list. But rather than just having one dashboard that tries to do everything, we have some flexibility. So if our users want to look up by resource, we can group by that. So for example, if I just want to look up, say, this particular projector, I can check just that one resource. And we just have different views. This is just equipment. This is just rooms. So there's lots of different ways to look up the data. Another thing I could do is just type in the name of what I'm looking for. Let's say I'm just looking for a conference room. If I just type that in there, I can filter down and it'll just show me records related to the conference room. So I have a lot of flexibility in terms of how I can filter down and see just the information that I care about. In regard to the lookup list, I mentioned that would be very simple. If I just have more equipment that I need to make available for people to check out, I can just come to this list, and if I add items on here, it would update in real time. Same thing for the rooms. So in terms of managing the system, it's going to be very simple to deal with. Okay, so that's some of the machinery. I want to talk to you a little bit about how I'm able to create this kind of system and how I'm able to do it without having to use any custom code or any complex settings. And so the way that I'm able to do that is using some Infowise settings. So if I go into the SharePoint list tab, using the Infowise Ultimate Forms, I have more options. And the way I get to that, I just go into the ribbon and click on the puzzle pieces icon. That takes me to an Infowise design screen, and this is kind of a settings hub, if you will, which gives me all the options that I'm going to need for this type of system. One thing that I've done here that's really key is set up some actions to control what the system does when I make that reservation. So in my system, I need to check for schedule conflicts. So what I'm doing is making a comparison, and I need to do a check to find out on a new reservation, basically, is the start time overlapping all the records? I basically need to compare if the start time overlaps or if the end time overlaps, then that's a schedule conflict. So basically, my system is checking that, and it's going to do a count. So there's really just two key actions that I have in the background. Now, the screen you're looking at is a front end, if you will, for things that you would otherwise have to do in SharePoint workflow using SharePoint Designer. For those of you out there who've built that, I think you would agree that it's really kind of a headache to work with, and it's a slow and cumbersome process. By contrast with these configuration settings, it's very simple and fast. I can create and adjust these very quickly. So I'll just kind of take a look at one of these actions, and I'll show you how it's set up. So basically, I have a action called calculate summary, and what it's doing, it's going to count up for me any records meeting particular conditions. So in the diagram that I just showed you, I'm needing to check whether the start time on the new reservation is greater than equal to other starts or less than the end. So basically, this is about finding if it's inside the window of another item. If it does, what will happen is it'll update this column that I've set up called start conflicts, and that's going to have bearing on whether the record gets updated to confirmed or conflict. So I need to have one of those for both the start and the end time. I have two actions like that. These are really easy to set up. I've got lots of different types of actions that I can choose from, and I can trigger basically which forms that would occur on. So this is going to run in the background every time I save one of those records. Okay, those are going to be run before the form saves, and then what happens afterwards is we're looking to see if there's any conflicts. If there is a conflict, what I want to do is update one of the fields and set status to conflict, and what I'm doing is looking for conditions. So it's very simple. Don't have to be a programmer or anything like that. In this particular action, I'm trying to find out whether if we have any start conflicts or any end conflicts, then I'm going to change the status to conflict. Okay, if those conditions weren't met, then nothing would happen. And then the comparable action is confirm. So if we're all clear, then I want to change the status to confirm. So it's similar to the last one, except I'm verifying that there are no start or end conflicts, and if that's the case, then it'll change the status to confirm. There's only one last action, so there's really only 5 things I had to do here, and that's to get rid of conflict records. Notice we did give the user some time. There's a message in the email that notifies them, but this action, rather than triggered on form save, I can set up a timer-based action, and in this case, I'm just running hourly to check. And so what happens is, if it'll roll through all these records, and if the status equals conflict, then the action is to delete. So this will clean up our list and get rid of those records so we don't have a bunch of clutter or garbage that isn't needed in our system. But the good news is immediately after the record's created, that user still has time to change the reservation if there was a schedule conflict. One thing I really like with Infowise, you have a really good email alert system, and certainly in a system like that, that's going to be very important. So you saw that I was just in the actions menu. Basically, I can scroll through here, and if I click on alerts, that's going to take me into an email settings page, and I can create some content templates first of all, and these are the messages that go out to the user when there's a trigger. So I only really need 2. One is the one that you just saw, and basically what it does is insert fields into my email for me just to notify confirm. And then of course there's the important one. If there's a conflict, it notifies the user, and I've got a message in here that says, hey, this is going to be removed from the system, if you don't resolve the conflict. Notice I've got a link to the calendar so they can kind of see, whoops, what did I do wrong? And then a link directly to the record in SharePoint. So they don't have to go searching around to find the conflict or find their record. Everything's linked up directly so they can just jump right to that from their email. So that's the content in the email. And then I set a trigger point. So if you look up here, I've created 2 email roles, one for confirmed and one for conflict. And I'll show you how simple it is for how that is to set up. Okay, so I just set the recipients. What's cool is I can just reference 2 fields in there. So notice it says reserved by and attendees. That's what's stored in the SharePoint people picker fields. in my form. And so it's dynamic. Depending on which reservation, it goes out to only the people that apply. And then the what to send really is the condition on when that should go out. And my condition is basically when the status changes to confirm, I want that to go out. So I just pick when the record's modified and status updates to confirm. And then down at the bottom, I choose the mail template that has to go out. So pretty simple settings, really easy to do. Same thing with the conflict. It's basically just has to check. If the status after the change is conflict, then go ahead and send the email, just to alert folks on how that works. Okay, so that's really kind of the guts of the system. There's a lot of things you could do with this. We could do a lot of different types of filtered views. We could have individual calendar pages for different rooms. So really we could expand the system and scale it however we want. It could be 10 times bigger than what you start out from. The key thing is that I didn't have to do any special JavaScript or doing anything in SharePoint Design or anything of that nature. I was really able to just build the system completely through configuration settings and things like that. Okay, I do want to talk to you a little bit about kind of what these tools are, how they fit into SharePoint, and how you can kind of take a look at it and try to do some of the things that I set up in the system. The Infowise Ultimate Forms tools this is a platform that sits on top of your existing SharePoint system. And it just really greatly expands on what you're able to do directly from the SharePoint interface. I'm in Office 365, so this particular one is using the app version of our product. Basically, if you remember, when I was in the list menu, what happens is it just offers you these additional options. You also notice I have these colored icons. So I can have indicators and icons. You can see for status, I have an icon for confirm, that type of thing. And I have icons for equipment and room. And that all just comes from these settings. So once you've installed the app into your tenant, it expands and gives you those additional options. There are options around controlling the interface. So you can have tab sections in your forms. You can control column permissions, validation, and you can even have customized output, such as PDF reports, charting, things of that nature. So there's really a whole toolbox, if you will, all kinds of different things you can do. If this is something you're curious about and you like to try it, that really would be kind of the next best step. And if you look in the Infowise website, it kind of tells you the next step to do that. You can get a full version of the product for free on a trial basis, whether you need it for your on-premise SharePoint or for Office 365. And that really is a good step because you can experiment and try to do some of these things. And we provide a lot of information on our website, which shows you, especially as a new user, kind of how to take some of those first steps. So if you download on the trial, it'll ask you, and you basically just need to pick whether you're doing that for on-premise or Office 365. So that'd be a good way to kind of begin evaluating the product. In terms of learning how to use the system and various tools, we have a lot of great resources on that front. There's at least a few different things that I would like to mention to you. In the training section, we have many tutorials which explain step-by-step with examples how to use those tools. So this includes screenshots and videos, and really just walks you through the basic steps of how to do things. Additional to that, we do provide more formal training programs. So if you wanted to have a dedicated web session with training for your organization, we can do Instructor-Led training, and these can really help you to ramp up quickly. Outside of that, we do webinars and blogging, and even do customer workshops where we have live building sessions where you have the opportunity to watch and even participate in the process of building a solution. So really quite a lot of excellent options for you in terms of beginning to use these tools in your SharePoint environment. All right, so let's do a drawing for a shirt right now. So let me tell you how I'm going to handle that. In the chat, if you will, what I'm looking for is a number I've already picked, which would be between 1 and 100. And I'll just be looking in the chat, and I'm going to go ahead and pick the person who gets closest to my number. So we'll go ahead and start that now. Okay, we're done. No more numbers. Okay, and one thing I do need to mention, this is limited to folks in the United States. It costs us loads of money to ship those shirts overseas, so hopefully I've got somebody from the U.S. Looks like Michelle Ashby got it. She had 55. So Michelle, if you can, send me an email or post in the chat. Actually, send me an email to willc@infowisesolutions.com and send me that shirt size and your address, and I'll get a shirt off to you. Okay, so that takes care of that. I know we did have some questions in the chat, and we will stay on to try to answer some of those questions. If there's something about the reservation system that I didn't quite cover today, or you want to ask me more about, you're welcome to also send me an email. Like I say, my email address is willc@infowisesolutions.com, and I'd be happy to try to explain more about the solution I was demonstrating. So that's about it. I really appreciate everybody joining for our session today. I do really love these tools. I work with many different SharePoint customers building solutions, and I have to tell you, even as a developer, I've really found that this is a must-have for me in terms of tools to build in SharePoint. So if this is new to you or something you've even seen a little bit, I hope some of the things I demonstrated today will show you that building this kind of solution can be a lot easier when you've got a platform like Infowise Ultimate Forms to help you along instead of kind of being in that headache scenario where you're building things from scratch. So thanks again. We will post a recording of the video later on, and that's it for our session today. So if you want to stay on and do questions in the chat, we'll keep the session running for a little bit. Thank you very much.